Hello everyone, and welcome to the CircuitPython Weekly for November 4th, 2019. This is the time of the week where we get together to talk about everything CircuitPython and Python on hardware related. I am Katney. I'm sponsored by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython. CircuitPython is a version of Python that runs on microcontrollers, which are tiny computers. This meeting is recorded. Sorry. This meeting is recorded. We record both the audio and the Discord channel where we host the meeting. So if you are in the meeting, be aware that you are being recorded. This meeting is held typically on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, and we hold it on the Adafruit Discord server. So if you're listening to this later and you'd like to join us, you can check that out at adafru.it/discord. We're there all week chatting in the CircuitPython channel, as well as many other channels. If you are looking for answers to questions of all sorts of tech-related stuff, check out the Adafruit Discord. The audio is held in the CircuitPython audio chat. And so if you are not interested in your voice being recorded, you can always type out any kind of discussion you'd like to have during the meeting into the CircuitPython channel, and we will read it off. CircuitPython development is sponsored by Adafruit, so please support them by purchasing hardware from adafruit.com. The video of this meeting will be released on YouTube and also on many podcast services. If you find that we are missing your favorite podcast service, please let us know so we can fix that up. This meeting is held in 5 parts. The first part is community news, which is a look at everything going on in the community with Python on hardware. The second section is State of CircuitPython on the libraries, where we talk about the sort of statistical overview of the entire project, gives us an idea of the health of the project and just information about it by numbers. We'll talk about the project overall and then separately discuss the core and the libraries. The third section is Hug Reports. Hug Reports is an opportunity to call someone out for doing something good, which doesn't happen enough, so we try to put effort into making sure it does happen. And it's held in a round-robin format where I will start as an example, and then we'll go down the list alphabetically, giving everyone who wants to a chance to give a hug report if they are interested. If you are not going to be attending the meeting, but you'd still like to give a hug report, or if you are going to be lurking in the meeting and still want to give a hug report, you absolutely can. Please include it in the notes document that is provided usually on Saturday or Sunday before the meeting and posted to the CircuitPython channel. And just put either text only or lurking or whatever right after your name, and then you can put your information in and we'll read it off alphabetically as though you are part of the meeting. The next section is status updates, which is a chance to talk about what you have done over the last week since the last meeting and what you will be doing over the next week until the next meeting. It is also held in a round-robin format. We start with me and go down the list and loop back around and give everyone who wants to a chance to talk. It's basically take a couple minutes, talk about what you've been doing. We love to know what you're up to, even outside of CircuitPython. We have heard about bathroom remodels before. So whatever it is you're doing, we want to know. This is our opportunity during the week to sync up with the community and find out what everyone's up to, not just Adafruit people, which is always excellent. And the last section is lovingly dubbed In the Weeds, which is where we have longer form discussions, either things that come out of status updates that seem to be longer than fit with a status update, or whether it be something that is already a long form discussion that should be held outside of status updates. Add it to In the Weeds in the notes document, and we will bounce to you, and you can talk about your In the Weeds discussion. We have one in there already. If you come up with one, please post it to the CircuitPython channel chat or in the notes document during the meeting so that we're not waiting around to see if anyone has an In the Weeds topic at the end. And that is how the meeting goes. And with that, I will turn it over to Phil for community news.
All right. Thank you, Kenny.
You're welcome.
Okay, first up, yay, we hit the next level of this server, which is there's 3 levels. So now I don't have to think about missing out on a higher level. So we have 30 boosts altogether. So we get a bunch of emojis, we get higher quality audio, and then everyone can upload bigger files. That's cool. Next up, CircuitPython 5.0 alpha is released. Read all the details, but specifically, there's more STM support. We've been adding that, and you can check that build out. We'll probably have another one pretty shortly after that. Big news, Hackaday and DigiKey and Adafruit is doing a Take Flight with Feather contest. There's already 9 entries. Some are from the community here, because a lot of them happen to just use CircuitPython. So check that out. There's a bunch of prizes. The way it works is the Hackaday and DigiKey team will look at the categories that you can enter it, and then Adafruit makes it, and then it's sold on DigiKey site. So cool way to do some manufacturing. And Lady Ada will be doing a few talks and more to some of the folks that are entering about manufacturability. So it's like mentoring and more. Open Hardware Month is over. All 35 posts are up. We did a post a day plus some. There's a bunch of Python on hardware included in there. So you can check those out all in one spot now. Python creator Guido van Rossum is retiring from Dropbox, and Dropbox had this really nice article, but I thought this was a neat quote that was in there. Maintainable code is more important than clever code. I like clever code, written clever code, but I also know clever code sometimes is not great for everybody else, especially if it's not commented. So I was thinking about how he emphasized that not only in his words, but also with Python itself. Easier to maintain. As we've been talking to people who are doing things like satellites, small sats, one of the reasons they're going with Python, CircuitPython, MicroPython is it's easier to maintain, and that's been one of the problems with code for things that go to space. It's up in space, and then people move on, they get out of school, people get older, there's satellites up there, and there's only so many people who can maintain them, but the code itself is complicated, so looks like Python is a place to help with that. Just last night, Snackboard, it's a new board coming out. Keith has been working on this for a bit. We've covered it, and now it's going to be on CrowdSupply, one of our favorite places for people to get hardware. So you can sign up over there. It's a Python microcontroller if you like doing things with Legos. Check that out. Run CircuitPython. Had a couple blog posts about this because I think a lot of people, they'll do GoFundMes, or they'll do Patreons, or they'll do Kickstarters, or like Adafruit, we just did buy one give one for Black Girls Code, and then there's also this teamtrees.org. So what we did is we showed how to use Dashblock. You can use any type of API, but Dashblock just makes it easy. You just like point and click, and whatever the numbers it sees, it uses that as a JSON feed, and then you can display that. So this is a really neat and easy way for people to keep track of crowdfunding and also things like Kickstarters. So I wanted to get that up there because a lot of people are involved with that. All aboard, we now have 86 boards on CircuitPython.org. Hug report to Melissa helping out, I think, today to get those last ones in for the newsletter. So a couple new ones. We got Itsy Bitsy and SparkFun had 2 different versions, one with Flash, with their SparkFun Quick Micro, and one without. This is all part of the weekly Python on Hardware newsletter. You can do an issue, you can do a pull request, and you can also just sign up for it on adafruitdaily.com. And that's the community news.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Annie.
All right, next up is the state of CircuitPython and libraries. This is a statistical overview of the project. It gives us a chance to hear about the project in terms of numbers and get an idea of the health of the project based on that. So first we'll talk about it overall, then we'll talk about the core, and then we will talk about the libraries. So overall, we had 19 pull requests merged by 10 authors. Thank you to everyone who has been submitting pull requests, and 8 reviewers, which is excellent, especially with 8 reviewers being on a number of 19 PRs. It's always good. We can't do this without reviews. So thank you to everyone who's been involved in that. We had 17 issues closed by 10 people and 8 opened by 8 people, which means we're net down, which is excellent. So overall, we are working towards another release on CircuitPython. We've been rewriting the BLE API, and that release is imminent. Once that's out, the API breaks and we do everything in a new way. So if you are using your Circuit Playground Bluefruit, for example, please keep an eye out for that, and we can help you get your project updated to the new API, and it would be great if you could test it, that sort of thing. It's not included in the current alpha release, but it will be included in the next one, which is going to happen very soon. We are working on updating all of the libraries to use GitHub Actions as the CI, and as well, we are likely going to be updating the version of Pylint that is used, which means our code will need to be looked at because there are new checks in that. And so that will be good to get that up to date. And that means there's going to be a lot of fixing going on in the libraries. It doesn't affect any of your code, but there will be a lot of updates and releases and that sort of thing coming up fairly soon. And that's where we are overall. In terms of the core, there were 0 pull requests merged in the last week. We have 12 open pull requests. There were 0 issues closed by 0 people and 4 open by 4 people, leaving 193 open issues. And there is a link to all of those in the notes. We have 7 active milestones. The important ones are the ones that are on 5X right now, and the ones that are not assigned to a milestone. So we definitely want to, there are 9 of those, and we want to make sure we stay on top of those so they don't get lost. In terms of downloads, our current alpha release as of the time that this was run was 5.0 alpha 4, which had 3,798 downloads, and our stable release 4.1.0 had 16,076. And there's a breakdown by board in the notes, as well as a breakdown of download stats by language available. If that's something that you're interested in, take a look at the notes. In terms of the libraries, we had 19 pull requests merged by 10 authors and 8 reviewers. Thank you again to everyone who has been involved with that, leaving us with 30 open pull requests currently. A couple of those are new. A lot of them are very old. It's something that we need to look into and see what we want to do with that. We had 17 issues closed by 10 people and 4 open by 4 people, getting us down to 138 open issues, and there's a link to those in the notes as well. We had a number of updated libraries in the past week, which is also excellent to see, and I will not read those off. Again, they are available in the notes, and that is the state of CircuitPython and the libraries. Next up is Hug Reports. Hug Reports is a chance to call people out for doing something good. We like to take the time every week to make sure that we're recognizing people for the work they're doing and giving other people a chance to recognize people or the community as a whole, or whomever they are interested in recognizing, a chance to do so. So it's held in a round robin format. I will start as an example, and then we'll go down the list alphabetically, and everyone who wants to will get a chance to say their part. If you are text only or lurking, please let us know, and I will read it off as we get to you. With that, I will get started. So I have a hug report for PT and Lady Ada for being understanding during a situation on Thursday. I had something come up which delayed some stuff that I was doing, and they were obviously very understanding about it, so I really appreciated that. Thanks to Jeff for discussion on Thursday. Really appreciate it. To the community moderators for continuing to be amazing. It's always nice to see things running smoothly and see things being caught before they turn into major issues. We try to discuss any kind of moderation issues, and I'm often, by the time I get to those discussions, they've already been had, and they are excellent. So I really appreciate everything that the community moderators have been doing on Discord. Thanks to Maker Melissa for taking notes in today's meeting, and a giant hug report to the team for another CircuitPython release. And next up is Maker Melissa.
Hello. So first of all, I wanted to give a hug report to Dave Petz for display shapes fix, and another to Drew Festini for adding PWM out to the Pocket Beagle. Hug report to Lady Ada for some tips on getting the sharp displays working in both on CircuitPython and on Blinka. And Arduino. And everyone involved in getting another release of CircuitPython out, and just a group hug to everyone.
All right, excellent. Next up is Sedacious.
Howdy. So I've got 3 hug reports. First off, for Summersoft, as part of his help with, I say help, really, he's been doing everything. Help with doing the move to GitHub Actions. He sent over a little bit of said foo to automate one more thing that was seeming like it was going to be a manual process. So that was super helpful, and also inspired me to finally learn sed, which has proved useful. Another one to Scott Tanut for a reminder a while back to automate the boring bits. I took that to heart and have been doing so, and a couple times this week that turned out well for me. And lastly, to Carter for his work adding the FT232H to Blinka. That has significantly changed my workflow in writing drivers for the positive. With that plus a teeny bit of automation has just made my cycle time so much faster and allowed me to use all the tools that you get on a desktop to help move things along. So that's been very, very helpful. That's it for me.
All right, thanks. Next up is Summersoft.
Hello. So I've got a hug for Dan for doing the next alpha release, and then of course everyone who contributed to the things that went into that release, and then a hug to Lady Ada, Katney, and Scott for the reviews and merges over the weekend.
You are very welcome. All right, next up I have someone in the notes. Stargirl says, group hug to this community just continues to be awesome. Then I have another set of notes from Tan Newt, who is on a plane to warm weather. Thanks to Dan for BLE PR reviews, Alpha 5, and holding down the fort. Thanks to Katney for running the meeting for a second week in a row. Thanks to Thea for the BLE PR review, and a group hug for all the awesome things I've missed. And again, someone in the notes, PT says, thanks to Maker Melissa for getting some more boards on CircuitPython.org. Then we have a lot of lurkers, which means next up is Dan H.
Hi. Let's see. So thanks to Scott for the continuing the BLE PRs and the reworks after we reviewed some of those PRs. After Thea and I reviewed them. Thanks to Thea for contributing to those reviews. So I'll talk about in my status about the details of those Bluetooth PRs. And I added a bunch of new boards, or several new boards, and Lady Ada tested those. Thanks to her for testing those. And thanks belatedly to Summersoft, who proposed 3 different ways for us to try to do versioning dependencies in the libraries, and we still have to figure that out, and I have an topic about that. And thanks to Lucian for continuing on the STM32F4 work. There's just tons of stuff to do, and he's chugging along. Thank you very much. Okay.
All right, excellent. Next up is Hair Effect.
So big thanks to Scott and Dan this week for being patient with me on PWM. I was very certain about a certain mathematical thing and also was very certainly wrong. So thank you for putting up with me on that. Otherwise, thank you to Lady Ada for testing all of the new STM32 PRs. And a group hug to everyone for the new release. Very excited.
All right, excellent. Let's see, next up is Jason P.
Can you still hear me all right?
I can.
Okay, so thanks to Dave Putz for the display shapes fix. The truth is my PyPortal's been idle for quite a few weeks here, but I did test out the fix and it works, so I appreciate that. And then also just a kind of a hug to the whole Adafruit team and anybody that's contributed to past learning guides and forums, because we're making good use of that stuff right now as we're working on a board here that is intended to support CircuitPython. So thank you to everybody who does that stuff. It's excellent.
All right, great. Next up is Jay Epler.
Good afternoon. Mostly I just want to thank Dan for doing the honors and tagging that new alpha release. It's going to be tremendously helpful to a lot of users to have that available rather than the previous alpha. So thank you for that, Dan, and thank you for everybody who put stuff in that release, because it's the best one yet.
All right, excellent. And that is Hug Reports. So next up is Status Updates. Status Updates is our chance to sync up on what everyone's been up to since the last meeting and what everyone will be up to until the next meeting. So take a couple minutes, tell us about what you've been doing, tell us about what you're going to do. And it's also an opportunity to get tips and tricks from others if you have any quick questions. And remember that if anything is going to turn into a longer form discussion, we have time for that in the weeds after status updates. So bear that in mind. And if you do come up with something that you want to talk about in the weeds, again, please mention it in the CircuitPython channel or add it to the notes. And with that, I will get started. So last week, updated the fingerprint sensor guide for use with Blinka Raspberry Pi and blogged that. Created a guide for the stemma relay breakout that has a quick example on how to use it, shows how to wire it up, that sort of thing, pinouts, etc. And blogged that up as well. Added the Feather Quadwing PCBs to GitHub. This is the quad version of the doubler and tripler that gives you a chance to put 4 feathers, or a feather and 3 wings on one board. We hadn't put the PCB files up for those yet, so that's been done. I updated the TTL serial camera VC0706 guide for use with Blinka and Raspberry Pi, or any single board computer in Linux. So there's now information on that available in the guide. Still need to blog that up, but that's been updated, and a few other miscellaneous things that I'm sure I've forgotten. This week, first thing that's up is adding the new USB-C micro LiPo charger to the micro LiPo guide. It's a new board we just released that I learned something new about that today. It turns out we've exposed the data pins on it, so it works both as a USB-C breakout and as a LiPo charger. So you can hook that up to your microcontroller board and use it as a USB-C breakout as well. So we need to add quite a bit of information about that to the guide, since there's little Easter eggs like that people will like to know. After that there's a lot I have to do for that, but after that is done, I'll be testing the NPR 121 hat on Raspberry Pi with Blinka, and if that is successful, then I will update the guide. Need to create an issue on AS7262 about adding UART support. testing the PMS 5003 air quality sensor on Raspberry Pi with Pi Serial, update the code, and then update the guide if that's successful. And then the HTS R04 needs a whole new guide. That'll be tested on Raspberry Pi and so on and so forth, as comes with new guides. So that's what's on my list. Probably some of this will still be on my list next week, as I don't foresee plowing through all of it. Oh, and so that is what I am up to. Next up is Maker Melissa.
Hello. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so last week I updated CircuitPython scrolling examples from the Learning Guide to work in the latest CircuitPython. I finished up a Nokia display guide, finished up the Sharp Memory display guide. I updated the CircUp guide to reflect new features. I worked on the WS2801 guide. Still working on that one, and I updated some boards on the CircuitPython.org website. This week I'm going to finish up some of the WS2801 issues with Hardware Spy on CircuitPython, finishing up that guide, and then I'm going to work on the SSD 1325 guide and work on updating the IS31FL3731 Charlie Plex LED guide.
Excellent.
And that's it.
All right, looking forward to all those updates. And next up is Sedacious.
Hello again. So last week I finished the guides for the LSM 303. That's more of an update, and the MPU 6050. They're not completely done. I'm waiting on final pictures of the hardware once it's manufactured to update. So that was fun with fritching and whatnot. I also did the LSM 6D SOX. It's another IMU from ST. I did the bring up on that and some initial hardware tests, making sure all the pins work and whatnot. That was done using Blinka and the FT232H that I previously mentioned. I was able to write a small script that automatically rerun my test script against the new version of the library when either the library or the test script were updated. So that allowed me to basically be continuously making and updating and fixing changes and seeing the output and stuff like that. It was super, super cool. So that's just the way I'm going to do it from here on out. Obviously, I have to test on running everything on through the normal hardware and whatnot later, but it's super fun and super cool. Let's see, what else? I did, so as part of that, I also did some kind of initial prototyping and sketching of this idea I've been floating around of abstracting registers for drivers and chips in JSON or some other format, and then using that to generate code. I was able to do that successfully with a couple of registers, and it's coming along very well. It's kind of referencing what I mentioned about Scott suggesting that I automate the boring bits. So I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff to come out of there. I'll spend more time doing interesting stuff and less time doing repetitive stuff. And it'll also theoretically make it easier for people with less experience to be writing drivers as well. Let's see, I attempted to make an easy make oven according to Dan's guide. And in doing so, got overly ambitious and essentially blew up one of my Pi portals. Hopefully, I mean, didn't really actually blow up. That'd be kind of impressive. It just doesn't work. Hopefully, I will be able to find someone to fix it. Let's see. I did a lot of work on my Droid reverse engineering project yesterday. I got pretty much the entire schematic captured as far as I can tell. There's a couple question marks where there's like a 0 ohm resistors for jumpers and inductors that kind of make the signal paths not entirely clear, but nonetheless it's good enough that I can start writing software for it, and hopefully this week I'll be doing more with that. Part of that, SED came up. I was able to use SED to rename a bunch of nets and parts from their default names to make things a lot easier to figure out the signal path and what needs to be connected to what. So that was super useful. I'll when I'm done, I'll dump a small said one-liner so you can see what I was doing into the chat. So what else? So that was it for last week. This week I'm doing more work on the LSM60 SOX, making it actual driver that reports data rather than just testing the hardware. I'm gonna do probably some guide wrap up for the LSM 303 AGR and the MPU 6050 when we get pictures in with the hardware, because I think both should be being manufactured this week. I'm probably going to start some new boards, and I will continue hacking on my Droid. Hopefully I'm going to get Blinky uploaded and maybe even spin some motors. And that's it for me.
Excellent. Sounds great. Next up is Summersoft.
Hello again. So last week, as far as the GitHub Actions CI migration, I got the community bundle migration done. That one was tricky. It required a little bit of finesse. It's not as boilerplate as the rest of them. And then I've continued working on migrating Adabot's daily Travis jobs over to Actions. I'm pretty close to finishing that. I've got a couple of things to worry about as far as the bundle updates and then uploading the reports to S3. Then for Adabot, late last week, I think it was. But with the migration to GitHub Actions away from Travis, we wanted a way to kind of gauge where we're at, metric-wise, of what's done and what needs to be done. So I disabled all the infrastructure checks on the libraries for Travis and then changed some of them to point towards if they've been migrated to GitHub Actions or not. And then on November 1st, the Hacktoberfest label function experienced a problem because apparently I forgot how to spell the word label in a variable, so it crashed. So I fixed that, and then Lady Ada merged it in Saturday night, I believe it was. So it actually didn't crash yesterday when it ran, and it successfully removed all the labels, from what I can tell, even though on the report it said it didn't remove any. So buggy code. It's awesome. So that was it for Adabot. The other thing is I got some parts in and I successfully transitioned Rosie Pi to boot from an SSD instead of an SD card. That's more of a longevity thing. So for this week coming up, I'm going to finish Adabot migration to GitHub Actions, and then I'm going to start on the CircuitPython.org Travis cron job. And then as I've gotten farther into working on Rosie Pi, I've gotten to a point where the prototype it works how I expected it to, and but the thoughts of how does it work in the wild have kind of come up. So I'm starting to look at its overall architecture topology, if you will, because having the app handler and the server and the test component all on the one place, it doesn't really work that well. So it limits you to one job. So it's kind of a bottleneck, and then it doesn't scale beyond that. And then if that fails, it all crumbles. So I'm kind of looking at moving some of the pieces out to the cloud and whatnot. But yeah, that's all I got. And then whatever else comes up.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for all your work. All right, next up I have Stargirl in the notes. Last week, finished up beta hardware and software on my Eurorack project, Winterbloom Soul. Found beta testers and ordered PCBs and components. Beta modules go out later this month. Poked at BLE stuff. This week, 100% of my energy will now be devoted to panicking about my SuperCon talk, so I may not be online much. Totally understandable. next up, I have Tan Newt in the notes. Scott, on a plane still. Polished up the BLEIO changes and the corresponding library work and should be merged shortly. Please test it out and help us expand the BLE services and advertisements. Out this week, soaking up sun in Florida, back Saturday. We'll be around Sunday through Tuesday and running Monday's meeting. And I scrolled too far. Nobody else in the notes. So it looks like next up is Dan.
Okay, let me scroll back to my notes. So as I mentioned, there were two major Bluetooth low energy pull requests, one for CircuitPython itself and one for the library, which Scott worked on, and then we had some feedback and he changed it, and they're basically ready to merge. We haven't merged yet because Scott and I decided that we would release Alpha 5 with the current API for right now, so we wouldn't break too many things at once. But so I did that release, and as mentioned, there are a lot of changes because this release is it's been almost 2 months since the previous alpha. So there are new boards, there are fixes to old boards, and so forth. The next release, probably Alpha.6, will include the new BLE changes and not much else, and that might be done quite soon. But we did want to have this separation. So the next thing that I'm going to do is, as soon as it's obvious that Alpha.5 is not completely broken by accident, I'll merge the other BLE changes and retest the examples and maybe prepare an Alpha.6, so not necessarily right away. And I'm going to give, Lady Ada is going to test some of the examples again on the Circuit Playground Bluefruit, and at some point, then we'll make an Alpha 6 with the new BLE changes. And then the other thing that I'm going to work on is that what she'd like to do is, currently the way that you talk to Bluefruit to Bluetooth things right now is that we often use the Nordic UART service, and we have this sort of arbitrary protocol that we send over UART. And it's not very Bluetooth-ish, and it would be nice to make a Bluetooth service, which is the sort of the way you're supposed to talk to devices. And both Scott and TAC are interested in making more of an Adafruit service. So I'm going to make a strawman service for that and get it to talk to some of the peripherals on the Circuit Playground Bluefruit, like the temperature sensor. And I'll try that out just from a Linux machine and continue to work on that. So that's sort of my next task. And you won't see much of that in the libraries or anything until it gets to a more stable form. But that's what we're trying to do first. I was going to start working on bonding some more. I keep saying that every week for the past 6 weeks, but it keeps getting put off for other reasons. And the only reason we really need bonding right now is to do BLE HID, and that will come after some of this other stuff. So I'll defer that for now. Okay, I think that's sort of clear and too many technical details, but that's what's going on.
Excellent.
All right.
Thanks, Dan. All right. Sounds like Drew will be able to do a status update.
Yes.
Excellent.
So, yeah, last week I was working on an issue where someone had noticed that PWM wasn't working for the Pocket Beagle. And that was because it had not been implemented yet. So I added an implementation for that and created a pull request. And then next up is to also add in the pin definitions for the Beagle.
All right. Sounds good. That means next step is Higher Effect.
Hey, so this past week I was working on wrapping up PWM and UART, which I've been working on for a while. It does look like those are pretty close, if not just totally finished, pending any further kind of style edits, which is going to open me up for a lot of STM32 port cleanup in the coming weeks. So I'm already putting through a couple of port pull requests just this morning. And they're probably going to continue to be fairly rapid fire, since a lot of stuff is just little minor things that need to be tweaked or fixed or added. That'll kind of expand our library support and just generally make things a little bit more stable, a little bit more maintainable across the whole port level. So I'm looking forward to that, because it's going to be the opportunity to kind of revisit a lot of things that kind of got left behind in the name of expediency on getting sort of the big major features out. And I'm also going to be keeping an eye on any new people who need support for STM32, since the new Feather S405 board is out and is running CircuitPython, presumably in people's homes and offices and stuff already. So I'm going to do my best to help out anybody who is new to the port and just checking out STM32 for the first time, maybe. Past that, I got dragged into a coworker's project making a light suit this past week. So that was kind of entertaining evening work. One of the music blinking kind of things that they had on America's Got Talent. And got some other kind of plastics related projects of my own, but for CircuitPython, it's going to be cleanup for the next probably couple weeks. So that's it for me.
All right, thanks. Next up is Jason P.
Okay, well, we have been working on a new board here that we call Evo, and it's got SAMD51 and an FPGA, Feather footprint, and we want it to support CircuitPython as well. So we are working on that, and we've got a few steps along the path, and we just got these boards in over the weekend. And we're starting to test out the board and put parts on them and just make sure all the power supplies are there and all that kind of stuff. So looks like we like I said earlier, being able to use the documentation and some of the guides and stuff that are there was really, really helpful. And we currently have a Metro M4 Express that will enumerate as an Evo board when you kind of put it in bootloader mode. Mm-hmm. So we've got that part down, and we're kind of using we're leveraging a lot of the Feather stuff to get this up and going. So hopefully that part of it will come together pretty quickly, but we got to get it all put together now, make sure we don't smoke anything. Yeah, so Mad Bodger's question. Yep, same group. That's us. So we're really intrigued by the being able to support CircuitPython with this, and excited about doing that. So just wanted to give an update. It's quite a learning experience. It's a real different kind of a thing than we did last time around, and it's pretty cool. Yeah, so good question on the IOs. So we have all the Feather IOs, and then there are an additional 32 castellated vias. So there's one for each one of the Feather IO, and then there are interstitial ones in between the through-hole vias that you can kind of see there. And then they wrap around on the edge as well. So the whole thing is designed to be able to be surface mounted down to a board. So if you didn't populate any of the through-hole stuff, or I'm sorry, it's not through-hole, but if you didn't populate like the USB header and that kind of thing, it's all there, so you could just surface mount it. So we had a customer kind of driving this design a little bit, and we wanted to make it, like I said, as long as we're going in this route anyway, I was really pushing for CircuitPython support on this, and that's what the team's been working on. So I'm really excited about it. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I know they're putting parts down right now and doing some testing and seeing something funny with some power supply outputs. So we need to make sure that's all working correctly before we do too much with the other chips.
Understandable. Keep us posted.
Mm-hmm. Will do. Yeah, thanks for all your guys' help. It's been great.
Of course. All right. Next up is Jay Epler.
Hello again. Last week I squeaked in and got my Hacktoberfest 4th PR, and that was a small fix for a Circuit Playground Bluetooth bug. If you touch the audio pad with your fingertip, that noise would be amplified and played on the internal speaker. And the fix for that was pretty simple, and it was code that was written but never enabled that just turns off the speaker enable pin. It's an internal pin only until you specifically request it. So that was an easy one because somebody had already written like 90% of the code, and I just had to get it enabled. This week, I remain busy with my soon-to-be ex day job. Friday is my last day, and I'm wrapping up a lot of things here at the office. It's very bittersweet because I worked for this company for 20 years, and I have a ton of friends here, but I'm also super excited for the next week after that and the next week after that to be with my CircuitPython friends instead. And it would be nice, I hope to have time to work on a driver for a VL53L1X distance sensor. This is on a quick breakout from SparkFun, and it seems to be totally different than the VL53L0X, as you can tell by the fact that it's a 1 instead of a 0.
Right.
So there doesn't appear to be a driver for this yet. I've looked around twice, and all the further I've gotten in playing with it is just to get it to enumerate on the I2C bus. So I have not gotten very far on that. But if I have some spare time, that's where it's going to be going.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone that is status updates. Next up is In the Weeds. In the Weeds is an opportunity for more long-form discussions, bigger questions, things that don't fit into status updates, or things that come out of status updates. We have 2 listed. First thing I will do, we have 3 now. First thing I will do is turn it over to Dan for his topic.
So we still have this issue, which I brought up a few times about we try to have 2 versions of support 2 versions of CircuitPython, usually one that's under development and then a stable one. And that means that there are libraries that might not work, like a particular version of a library might not work on one version versus the other. And right now we don't have any way to build bundles that vary between CircuitPython versions. In the past, we've solved this problem by writing code that actually figures out what the version is and does the right thing inside the library, but that can get more and more complex, and it's sort of extra code. So I posted an issue which I've linked to, and Summersoft commented on that, and he came up with 3 ways of trying to specify how we might build bundles that differ between CircuitPython versions. So there's a 4x bundle and there's a 5x bundle and so forth. One way is branches. One way is to put some stuff in the library files that say what version that particular commit will work with. And the other is to augment the semver tags. You can add something called metadata to a semver tag, anything that comes after a plus sign. So the example I gave is like you might have a library version like 2.0.1, and you say, well, I want to say that needs at least CircuitPython 500 to work with it. So it would be 201 plus 500. And then the bundle builder can look through all the tags for any particular library and choose the highest tag that will work for a particular bundle. So for instance, if 198 is for 40 and below, then all the bundles would use 198, but for the 50 bundle, you use the 201s. And if the tags weren't augmented with this plus thing, then it would just assume that any thing works for that library version works for any CircuitPython version. So the third thing seems like the easiest one because it doesn't require rummaging around inside the files in a bundle. You can just look at the tag. If you look at the issues for Semver on GitHub, there's an issues place in Semver. Other people have had the same problem in various ways. I'll post this in link in the. And basically, the Semver people say we don't really do that because all we're trying to version is an API, and if you're trying to encode dependency information in there, well, that's not our business. And if it actually even says like you shouldn't rank versions based on what's in the build information with stuff after the plus sign. That's just metadata that doesn't matter. On the other hand, they also say like, but if you need to do something like this, go ahead, sort of. Or maybe you should come up with a better dependency scheme, because this is just depending on the version of CircuitPython, and in general, libraries depend on other versions. And if you look at something like the way like requirements.txt, for instance, it actually lets you version all kinds of things. So the question is, should we go ahead and try to do this? What should we do? We need a solution probably pretty soon, because if we're going to support 4 and 5 at the same time when 5 comes out for even a little while, then we're going to run into this problem.
So I don't like branches right off.
Right. I don't like them either. Yeah, right.
Summersoft, which of the other two is easiest for you to implement in Adabot?
So, well, and this isn't an Adabot. This is in...
Right. No, I know.
This is in build tools.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so the easiest is the Semver one. And I will say the Semver one is my favorite from an all-around perspective. The branches I don't like. It is probably the cleanest from a perspective of having that transition code, where we used to have, in the import section of the library where you'd have check the version, and if it's this version, do this, and if it's not, then do this. The branches are probably the best for that particular problem, but it comes with that heavy maintenance cost of, however many versions you were currently building in build tools, that's how many branches you're going to have to maintain. The one where you put basically a dunder variable in the file, it works well. I mean, we do that currently with the version and the repo, and that works. It solves a lot of the problems. The initial maintenance of it is kind of rough because you got to update every single library. I mean, you could do it through attrition, I guess. You check it. If it's got it, then you use it. If it doesn't, then you just continue on. But it does, in Dan's response to my comments on the issue, it is an expensive process because you have to open for basically every tag, you'll have to open the file, iterate through the file, check the version, close the file, then proceed on with whatever you're doing. The downside to this, to using the metadata for the Semver, is that one's a cultural problem. No one at this point is used to doing it. So you're going to go possibly, through bouts where someone releases it, a new version of the library, but forgets to tag it. Well, then you have to do another release because you can't amend, the tag. So, but Semver is the easiest, and it's my favorite, but it does come with that cultural aspect of the human error, so to speak.
Well, we've run into that with a lot of things, and it hasn't really been that painful to bring people on board to new things.
Right.
So I don't.
We could. I'm sorry. I agree. Yeah, it's the cultural thing is a thing, but like Katnia said, it shouldn't be that bad. And also, we can further automate the release process to take a lot of the decision making out. Like I started using a template for releases when I do them, and it could just as easily be a script that uses the PyGitHub or some other way of interacting with the API rather than always using the UI.
I think also for most libraries, there won't actually need to be any metadata because most libraries don't really care.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There are not a whole lot of them they're generally pretty version agnostic.
Right. By the time, and when they do become version, by the time a library gets to a point where maybe it needs to have a dependency, it might be that the breaking change in the CircuitPython version has already happened, and so you never need to add it. I think one of the advantages that we have, one of the reasons that we're not worried about requirements and dependency checking so much is because we build a bundle and it has every latest thing in it. If it were the case that you would fetch the libraries one at a time, which is kind of maybe sort of a circup question, but then you have to start worrying about checking the dependency. But basically, since we package everything together, you're sort of guaranteed, like, if you need a new version, if library X needs a new version of library Y, if you release them at the same time, they're going to get in the same bundle. And so it's not a problem because it's sort of automatic dependency updating.
Right. I will branch off just a minute on this one. So
Yeah.
with 5X, I mean the main one that kind of is driving this is the BLE library.
Yep.
So
right, and even Lumore pointed out in a meeting that we had earlier today is that she doesn't really care that much because this is all alpha anyway. So, and also she doesn't expect that there are actually very many people who are using the 4X BLE stuff. That the number of such people is actually small,
right.
Which maybe it doesn't make that much difference, but it's still a support issue.
But I just wanted to note that I had that other issue over on the build tools repo. Like we can't actually kind of handle that without answering this current question.
Mm-hmm.
Where if I say that, if we add some data to what build tools looks for as it builds, we can tag a release number to include pre-release libraries as opposed to only using published.
Yeah.
So I wanted to point that out as an option currently. It doesn't have to wait on the answer to this because its dependency. Every single programming language that I have ever used has this problem.
Right.
So I think we should go with the Semver thing for a multitude of reasons, not the least of which being it makes the most sense in terms of A, it is easy to limit it to only the libraries that need it, and B, there is not a significant amount of work that would go into it to implementing it in terms of on the Semver end, not on the build tools end.
Right.
The gist of it was, as long as it's not, if it's more than a day's work, we should be putting that effort somewhere else. I don't get the impression that it is.
If what's more than a day's work?
To implement the bundle specific mechanism using augmented Semver tags.
I don't know, because of my schedule, me personally, like if I'm the one who's doing this, I'm trying to figure out like how to work that out, what a day of work is.
Right.
Yeah, I might end up implementing it. I'll see.
Yeah, and you can do it too. I'm not calling dibs or anything on it.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you have time, that's great because right. But
I think the testing.
I'll look and see if it becomes a morass in some way.
Yeah.
Like I was hoping I need to do some sorting of tags. Like I have to fetch all the tags and then sort them.
Yeah.
That's probably the most work, but it's not really a big job. So I'll just see how easy it is to do.
Okay.
And if it doesn't work out in the long run, change it, right? So we may end up adding more stuff, or we may end up having to start doing more fancier. I mean, package management and dependencies are a pain for everybody. Python doesn't have a good solution, or Python's solution is not as great as it could be by any means. Everybody has this problem.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll take that. Right. I just wanted to, the consensus. Right. My intuition was the last thing was the best choice, and that was confirmed. So that's good. All right. It's done from what this discussion is done from my point of view.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right, so we will we'll implement that, and then we can also fix the other issue that Summersoft was referring to as well with on the build tools.
Yeah.
So I think both of those can be taken care of, and it will give us. Because I really think that we need to fix this sooner rather than later, because people are starting to use things, and I know, for example, one of our own people couldn't find the pre-release because the pre-releases don't have the assets automatically expanded on the GitHub repo. So if you go to the GitHub repo and you go to the releases and you scroll down until you find assets, you find the old version because you don't know to click that arrow. So like I was able to fix that situation and help them out, but if they're having that issue, like other people are definitely having that issue.
Do you have anything to say about this from a support point of view?
Not really.
Okay.
Not at this point.
All right.
I guess one of those things where you probably can't pre-guess that. You just have to like make your best guess, put it out in the wild, and see what it does.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Excellent. Sounds like we have a plan. So next up, I will hand it over to Drew for a question about Linux PWM out.
Yeah, just had a question here. So this is dealing with the PWM out implementation in Adafruit Blinka. So most boards have the same path to access the PWM, like I pasted in there, like sys/class/PWM. And for the BeagleBone and Pocket Beagle, they have a slightly different path. So the way I implemented that was by copying the PWM out file, making my own version for the chip that's in the BeagleBone, which is the AM3358. So that's the way it is right now. But Eslight proposed that making a function to format that path so that if we have boards that path is not standard in, we can just override that, because right now I feel kind of bad for having essentially copied this file and only having made a few changes throughout it. And if people come along and improve the PWM out in the generic Linux, then the one for the AM3358 will fall behind. So just wanted to get opinions if that seemed like a right way to go about solving it, making this like a helper function that can be overridden. And I don't know if people can see in the chat there, that may probably provide some context to it, or maybe I should paste it in again.
I think anything that makes it more maintainable and more broadly usable is a better way to do it.
Okay.
In terms of the fact that there may be more boards that come along, like you're saying, and the more broadly spread the same set of code is, that's not great, because that means there's 4 different places you need to update something if something changes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this would be basically be changing the current PWM out implementation to make it use a helper function instead. So I'll give that a shot.
Yeah, that might work well. That might work well, I said.
Okay. So I'll probably create a pull request for that once I do it and see what people think about that. I guess the other thing that I was curious about when I came across this, I was like, okay, we don't have PWM out for the BeagleBone, and I went to go look at how the Pi was doing it, and I noticed that there's not a implementation for the Pi. This generic one's just covering the Coral board and the Giant board. Does anyone know the history of why it wasn't done for the Pi? Was it just because people did it with? Sorry.
I think it's something to do with the RPi GPIO library not allowing it or something.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess you
I
don't-
read on it a little while ago. I don't remember why. But our Pi GPO was using software, not the hardware. So it's
Right,
not
yeah.
at all that reliable.
Yeah, I think they only have one hardware PWM, and I think that might even be used for audio. So I guess most people are just using an expander, which the few threads I saw, people are like, well, just use an expander. So I guess it's not an issue in that regard. And it looks like right now the only thing we have are the Beagle, the Coral board, and the Giant board right now.
Okay.
But,
Sounds
Thank you.
good. Next up, I will turn it over to Carter.
Sure. Hopefully a real quick one. It's just the little thing I posted in the scrollback that ran into this weekend working an issue. Patched it. It was happening in frame buffer and was able to fix it by just adding a try except to get around this. But I'm wondering if it's indicating that there is an issue in core, or if this is just, something that's going to be, or if it's just the way it is.
So I looked at this, what os.stat returns, and the last three numbers are a 32-bit integer. I can't actually tell what that is. I think they're time values, but I'm not sure. It's not really obvious. So I think we should decide maybe internally what to do about this. I don't think those values are very interesting, so we might be able to make them smaller on non-long int platforms.
But in general, it sounds like something you're curious about doing something about.
It needs to be fixed.
It needs to be fixed. Okay, so you want me to open up an issue for you?
Yeah. So
okay,
I'll just show you. Like if you try this on an M4, and you'll see. Like I'll just paste in what I.
Or here's from the docs.
Yeah, but if you just look, if I tried this on a. Here, I'll finish pasting this. See those the 148 numbers are too big.
So you're right, they're time related, A time, M time, C time, which
right. So they're just we should
maybe we should just scroll down.
Yeah.
Modified, change, and some other something. Access.
Right. So I'll figure out like what those are, and maybe we can back off on them or just make them be junk or something. I don't really know what to do about that.
Okay. Yeah. I'll open up an issue for you.
All right. Thanks. Okay.
No problem. Thanks.
Excellent. All right. And that sums up in the weeds. So I think it is time to wrap up. This has been the CircuitPython Weekly for November 4th, 2019. We hold this meeting every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. You can, if you're listening to this later on a podcast or watching it on YouTube, you can always join us. Everyone is welcome. Please visit adafru.it/discord to join the Adafruit Discord, and you can find us all week in the CircuitPython channel. So if you have any questions, want any assistance, that sort of thing, we're always available, not just during the meetings. So thank you so much for everyone who participated, and everyone have an excellent week. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.